The garage door creaked as I pushed it open, expecting nothing but the usual clutter of tools and forgotten projects. I'd come home early from a 3-day corporate retreat in Denver, my suitcase still in the car, my tie loosened, my mind already halfway to a cold beer. The house had been silent when I walked in, but something felt off, too still, too empty. Then I heard it, a muffled laugh, low and intimate, coming from the one place I never thought to install security cameras. The garage. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. My wife, Lauren, was supposed to be in an open house until 8. My nephew, Tyler, who'd been crashing on our couch for the past 6 months, was supposed to be job hunting. But there they were, tangled together on an old camping mattress in the corner, oblivious to the world. Lauren's blouse was unbuttoned, Tyler's hands roaming, their laughter cutting off the second I flicked on the overhead light. "Miles!" Lauren gasped, scrambling to cover herself. Tyler just smirked, that cocky, entitled smirk I'd ignored for too long, and said, "Guess the cat's out of the bag, huh, Uncle Miles?" I didn't scream. I didn't lunge. My mind, trained from years of high-stakes strategy, first on chessboards, now in boardrooms, kicked into gear. I saw the scene like a game in progress. Pieces exposed, moves calculated, vulnerabilities laid bare. Lauren stammered excuses. "It's not what it looks like." But her voice faded into static. Tyler's smirk, though, that stayed sharp, a challenge. I pointed at the door. "Get out," I said, my voice low, controlled. Tyler shrugged, grabbing his shirt, but Lauren hesitated, her eyes darting between us, as if weighing her next play. That hesitation told me everything. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Therefore, as I watched them slink out, my mind wasn't on the betrayal itself. It was on what came next. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding, my thoughts already calculating moves like I was back at the chessboard. But this wasn't a game. This was my life, and I was about to make my first move. I locked the garage door behind them, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. Lauren had tried to follow me back into the house, her voice rising in pitch. "Miles, let's talk about this." But I'd slammed the front door in her face, hearing her muffled protests through the wood. Tyler, predictably, was already gone, his beat-up Honda peeling out of the driveway. I stood in the living room, staring at the couch where he'd been sleeping, the indentation of his body still visible in the cushions. I thought back to how he'd ended up here. My sister, Kendra, had called me 6 months ago, her voice thick with desperation. "Tyler's in trouble again, Miles. He needs a fresh start. Please just give him a chance." I'd said yes because that's what family does, right? I'd ignored the warning signs, his late nights, his evasiveness, the way Lauren always seemed too eager to defend him. But now, the pieces clicked into place, and I cursed myself for not seeing it sooner. I grabbed my phone, ready to call Kendra, but then I stopped. Lauren's reaction in the garage replayed in my mind, her hesitation, her eyes lingering on Tyler as he left. She wasn't just embarrassed. She was torn. Therefore, I needed to know how deep this went. Was this a one-time lapse, or something more? I marched to our bedroom, yanking open her nightstand drawer. Nothing but her usual clutter, lip balm, a dog-eared paperback, a bottle of melatonin. But then I noticed her laptop, half hidden under a pile of laundry on the dresser. I opened it, my fingers trembling as I guessed her password. Our anniversary, the one thing I thought still meant something. It worked. Her email was open, and there in bold was a message from Tyler, sent just yesterday. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe. Tell him you're working late again." My stomach churned, but I kept scrolling, each message worse than the last. Months of lies, months of betrayal. That's when I realized this wasn't a one-time mistake. Therefore, I needed to know just how deep this betrayal went. I sat there, hunched over Lauren's laptop, the glow of the screen burning my eyes as the clock ticked past midnight. My mind, always analytical, started piecing together the timeline. The messages went back 4 months, 4 months of secret meetups, coded language, and inside jokes. But what struck me wasn't the flirting or the deception. It was the pattern. Tyler wasn't just a reckless kid. He was calculated, deliberate, playing a role I hadn't seen coming. I remembered a lesson from my chess days. Always look for the opponent's hidden strategy. I'd been a grandmaster once before I traded tournaments for corporate boardrooms, and I knew that every move revealed intent. So I dug deeper, opening her banking app, still logged in. That's when I saw it. Transfers, dozens of them, to an account I didn't recognize. 500 here, 1,000 there, all labeled consulting fees. Consulting? Tyler, the guy who couldn't hold a job at a gas station. My heart sank, but my mind sharpened. I cross-referenced the dates of the transfers with the messages. Each payment lined up with a meetup like clockwork. Lauren, a real estate agent, was meticulous with money. Our money. But now she was funneling it to him. Therefore, there was only one explanation. This wasn't just an affair. It was a scheme. I leaned back, the room spinning, my thoughts racing. If this was a game, they'd just move their queen, thinking I was blind to their strategy. But I wasn't. I opened a browser, searching for the account number, hoping to trace it. The results were locked behind paywalls, but one thing was clear. It wasn't a personal account. It was tied to a business. A business I'd never heard of. I closed the laptop, my jaw tight, my resolve hardening. Lauren thought she could play me, thought she could hide behind lies and excuses. Tyler thought he could smirk his way out of consequences. They were wrong. Therefore, it was time for me to bring out my pawns. I smiled for the first time in hours, my mind already mapping out the board. But then I heard the front door creak open. The sound of the door jolted me upright, my pulse spiking. Lauren's voice echoed through the house, soft but insistent. "Miles, I know you're awake. We need to talk." I stayed silent, letting her stew in the dark, my mind already 3 steps ahead. She thought she could charm her way out of this, like she always did, smiling, deflecting, turning my doubts into guilt. But not this time. I met my best friend, Derek, the next morning at a diner downtown, the kind of place where the coffee's strong and the booze are sticky. Derek, a divorce lawyer with a sharp tongue and sharper instincts, listened as I laid out the facts. Lauren, Tyler, the messages, the money. He whistled low, leaning back in a booth. "You've got a case, Miles, but revenge? That's a whole other beast. You sure you want to go nuclear?" "I don't have a choice," I said, my voice steady. "She's not just betraying me. She's robbing me blind." Derek nodded, scribbling notes, but warned me about the legal risks, restraining orders, defamation claims, the works. I didn't care. I needed to know everything, starting with that mysterious business account. Therefore, I spent the afternoon digging into Lauren's real estate dealings, using my corporate contacts to pull records. Well, I found made my blood run cold. She'd set up shell companies, dummy corporations to hide assets that should have been ours, marital property. One of them, Bright Horizon Properties, had been active for over a year, funneling money into accounts I couldn't trace. I leaned back, my mind racing, piecing together the puzzle. This wasn't just about Tyler. This was a long game, a calculated play to drain me while she built her escape hatch. But then Derek called, his voice tense. "Miles, you need to see this. Lauren's already lawyered up, a shark from upstate. She's not playing defense. She's gearing up for a fight." I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Checkmate wasn't far off. She thought she had the upper hand, but I was already moving my pieces. But then Derek said something that changed everything. Derek's voice crackled through the phone, urgent, almost panicked. "Miles, you're not going to believe this, but one of those shell companies? It's not just Lauren's name on the paperwork. Your sister, Kendra, is listed as a co-owner." I sat there, the diner's noise fading into a dull hum, my coffee growing cold in my hands. Kendra? My sister, the one who'd begged me to take Tyler in, the one who'd always had my back? I thought back to our childhood. Kendra shielding me from bullies who mocked my nerdy chess obsession, teaching me how to throw a punch even though I never used it. She was fierce, loyal, the kind of person who'd burn the world down for family. But now, her name was tied to Lauren's lies, to Tyler's betrayal. Was she complicit, or just another pawn in their game? Therefore, I drove to her house, my mind churning, my hands gripping the wheel too tight. Kendra lived an hour away, in a modest split level she'd bought after her divorce. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to see her face, to gauge her reaction. When she opened the door, her smile faltered, her eyes darting past me. as if expecting someone else. Miles? What's wrong? I didn't waste time. Bright Horizon Properties. Explain. Her face went pale, her hands fumbling with the dish towel she held. She stammered, I don't know what you're talking about, but the lie was written all over her. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, my voice low, controlled. Kendra, don't play me. I know about Lauren, about Tyler, about the money. What I don't know is how deep you're in. She collapsed onto the couch, her head in her hands, and, after a long silence, she whispered, I knew. About them, I found out a month ago, but I couldn't tell you. Tyler's my son, Miles. Her voice broke, but my anger didn't soften. Therefore, I had to confront her, but carefully, like moving a knight into enemy territory. You knew, and you let it happen? I asked, my voice sharp. But then she said, You don't understand. Lauren's done this before. Kendra's words hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. Lauren's done this before. I stared at her, my mind racing, try to reconcile the sister I'd always trusted with the woman sitting before me, her eyes red, her hands twisting that dish towel into knots. I remembered the summer she taught me how to set up a chessboard, her patience endless even when I knocked over the pieces in frustration. She'd always been my protector, my confidant. But now, she was part of this, part of the betrayal that was tearing my life apart. Explain, I said, my voice colder than I intended. Kendra took a shaky breath, her gaze dropping to the floor. It was years ago, before you married her. She had an affair with her boss at that real estate firm in Syracuse. I thought she'd change, Miles. I thought she loved you. My stomach twisted, but my mind sharpened, piecing together the pattern. Lauren wasn't just a cheater. She was a predator, targeting people for gain, discarding them when they were no longer useful. But then Kendra added, I didn't know about Tyler until recently, I swear. When I found out, I confronted her. She said it was nothing, but I saw the way she looked at him. I leaned forward, my voice low, deliberate. And the shell company? Your name's on it, Kendra. Are you telling me you're innocent in that, too? Her eyes widened, her hands flying up in defense. I signed some papers, yes, but I didn't know what they were for. Lauren said it was for tax purposes, to help you both. I trusted her, Miles. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the idea that family, my family, couldn't be this broken. But the evidence was stacking up, and trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Therefore, I had to confront her, but carefully, like moving a knight into enemy territory. If you're lying, I said, standing, you'll regret it. Her sob followed me out the door, but my mind was already elsewhere, locked on Lauren. Therefore, I decided it was time to dig into her past and tear it apart. I drove home, the road blurring as my thoughts churned, my hands tied on the wheel. Lauren's past, her real past, was the key. I'd always seen her charm, her ambition, as strengths, qualities that made her a top real estate agent. But now I saw them for what they were, weapons, honed over years of manipulation. I needed evidence, not just of her affair with Tyler, but of the patterns Kendra hinted at, the schemes she'd pulled before me. I used my corporate contacts to pull records, starting with that scandal in Syracuse. A former colleague, now a private investigator, owed me a favor. Within hours, he sent me a dossier, court filings, old news articles, even a deposition from her ex-boss. Lauren had seduced him, gained access to his client list, then funneled deals to a rival firm. When he caught on, she claimed harassment, forcing a settlement. It was ruthless, calculated, and eerily familiar. But then I found something worse. The shell companies weren't just hiding assets. They were laundering money. Bright Horizon Properties had transactions linked to offshore accounts tied to Tyler's name. Tyler, the drifter, the kid I'd written off as aimless, wasn't just Lauren's lover. He was her partner in crime. Therefore, this wasn't just betrayal. This was a conspiracy. I sat back, my heart pounding, my mind mapping out the board. In chess, you don't just attack. You control the center, forcing your opponent into a corner. Lauren and Tyler thought they were untouchable, but they'd underestimated me. I opened my laptop, drafting an email to my investigator, asking for more on those offshore accounts. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. We need to talk, Miles. I'm sorry, okay? Let's fix this. I stared at the screen, my anger flaring, but my resolve hardening. She thought she could manipulate me again, play the remorseful wife. She was wrong. Therefore, I decided it was time to dismantle their entire operation, piece by piece. I replied, fine. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., our house. I wasn't planning to reconcile. I was setting a trap, and she was walking right into it. I spent the day preparing, my mind sharp, my movements deliberate, like setting up a chessboard before a match. Patience was my strength. Years of waiting for the perfect moment to strike, whether in tournaments or boardrooms, had taught me that. Lauren wanted to talk to fix this, but I knew her game. She tried to charm me, deflect, maybe even cry. But I wasn't playing for reconciliation. I was playing for destruction. That afternoon, I leaked the first piece of evidence, a detailed report of Bright Horizons transactions, to a local journalist I trusted, someone who'd been sniffing around real estate fraud for years. I didn't include Lauren's name. Not yet. I wanted the story to build, to create pressure, to make her squirm. But then, at 7 p.m., she walked into our house, her heels clicking on the hardwood, her face a mask of contrition. Miles, she started, her voice soft. I messed up. I know I did. But we can work through this, can't we? I let her talk, watching her performance, noting the cracks, her eyes darting to the door, her hands fidgeting with her purse. Work through what exactly? I asked, my voice calm, controlled. The affair, or the fact that you've been stealing from me for months? Her mask slipped, her mouth opening, then closing, as if searching for a lie. I don't know what you mean, she stammered, but I cut her off, sliding a printout of the transfers across the table. Her face went pale, but then she did something I didn't expect. She stood, her voice rising, her charm replaced by venom. You think you're so smart, Miles? You think you can ruin me? I'll take everything in the divorce, everything. You'll be left with nothing. I laughed, because she didn't know I'd already made my next move. The journalist's article was scheduled to drop tomorrow, and the IRS was already sniffing around her offshore accounts. But then I got a call from Derek, his voice tense. Miles, the article's live, early. And it's not just Lauren's name in it. Tyler's all over it, and he's claiming you set him up. I ended the call, my pulse spiking, and pulled up the article on my phone. The headline screamed, "Local real estate agent linked to fraud scheme," but the subhead hit harder, "Nephew alleges uncle's involvement in setup." Tyler's quotes were pure fiction, painting me as a vindictive control freak who'd fabricated evidence to destroy him and Lauren. He's always hated me, Tyler claimed, because I wouldn't bow to his rules. The comment section was already a cesspool, strangers calling me abusive, unhinged. Lauren, still standing in our dining room, smirked, her confidence returning. "You didn't think we'd just roll over, did you?" she said, her voice dripping with venom. Tyler's good at playing the victim, and I'm good at winning. I wanted to wipe that smirk off her face, but I stayed calm, my mind racing. Therefore, I needed to regroup, to counter their move before it spiraled out of control. I drove to Derek's office, the city lights blurring past, my thoughts churning. Derek was waiting, his laptop open, his face grim. "This is bad, Miles," he said, scrolling through Tyler's social media. "He's got half the internet believing you're the bad guy. And Lauren's filed a restraining order, claiming you threatened her tonight." I leaned back, my anger flaring, but my resolve hardening. They were playing dirty, but they'd miscalculated. I knew their weakness, evidence. "Check the security footage from the house," I said. She was in my space, not the other way around. But then Derek froze, his eyes on the screen. "Miles, there's something else. Lauren's been recording you, inside the house. There's a hidden camera in the living room. I found the feed on her cloud account." My stomach dropped, my mind replaying every moment I'd thought was private. My calls with Derek, my rants, my breakdowns. She'd been building a case, editing reality to fit her narrative. I was cornered but not defeated. Therefore, I decided it was time to sacrifice a piece to win the game. "Let her think she's got me," I said, my voice steady. "Let the restraining order stand. But get me everything on that camera feed. We're turning her weapon against her." I sat in Derek's office, the weight of the situation pressing down, but my mind clear, focused. In chess, there's a famous match, Kasparov versus Topalov, 1999, where Kasparov sacrificed his queen, the most powerful piece, to win. It's a lesson in strategy. Sometimes you let your opponent think they've won, only to trap them in a checkmate they never saw coming. I decided to do the same. Let Lauren have her restraining order, her public sympathy, her edited footage. I'd use her momentum against her. The next day, I made a public statement, posted on social media, my tone measured, remorseful. I've let my emotions get the better of me. I wrote, I want to resolve this peacefully, for everyone's sake. Derek thought I'd lost my mind, but I saw the bigger picture. Lauren's text softened, her tone almost triumphant. I'm glad you're seeing reason, Miles, she wrote. Maybe we can settle this quietly. She thought she'd won, her guard dropping, her moves careless. But then I made my real move. Using the evidence Derek pulled from her cloud account, I filed a whistleblower report with the IRS, detailing every transaction, every offshore account, every shell company. The report was anonymous, untraceable, but it triggered an audit, a slow-moving tsunami that would drown her and Tyler. I knew the IRS didn't play games. Once they started digging, they wouldn't stop. I waited, watching the pieces fall, my patience my greatest weapon. The article's fallout faded, the internet moving on to the next scandal, but the IRS audit was just beginning. Lauren's calls grew frantic, her voicemails pleading, then threatening. You think you can hide behind this, Miles? I'll drag you down with me. But then Tyler made a move I didn't expect. He showed up in my office, unannounced, his posture casual, but his eyes sharp, predatory. Drop the IRS complaint, he said, leaning against the doorframe, or I'll tell the world about your little corporate deals. You're not as clean as you think. I stared at him, my anger flaring, but my mind calculating. Therefore, I had to decide, call his bluff or escalate the game to a level even he couldn't handle. Tyler stood there, leaning against my office doorframe, his posture casual, but his eyes sharp, predatory. Drop the IRS complaint, he repeated, his voice low, confident, or I'll tell the world about your little corporate deals. You're not as clean as you think. I stared at him, my anger flaring, my mind racing. I'd underestimated him, written him off as a reckless kid, a pawn in Lauren's game. But now I saw the truth. He was a player, not a piece, and he'd been studying the board as closely as I had. I thought back to the corporate retreat in Denver, the late-night negotiations, the gray areas I'd navigated to close deals. Nothing illegal, but not exactly pristine, either. Tyler couldn't possibly know the details, unless Lauren had been digging, feeding him ammunition. But then I noticed something that made my blood boil. On his wrist, glinting under the fluorescent lights, was my father's watch, a vintage Omega, a family heirloom Lauren knew meant the world to me. She must have given it to him, a final twist to the knife. That watch, I said, my voice low, controlled, doesn't belong to you. Tyler smirked, twisting his wrist to show it off. Consider it payment for services rendered, he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. My anger flared, but my mind sharpened, calculating. He thought he could blackmail me, thought he could use my father's memory as leverage. He was wrong. Therefore, I decided it was time to end this. Not just for me, but for the man who'd taught me to play chess, who'd taught me patience, who'd trusted me to protect our family's legacy. You want to play dirty? I said, leaning forward, my voice steady. Go ahead. Leak whatever you think you have. But remember, Tyler, I've got the IRS, the journalist, and every shred of evidence on my side. You've got nothing but lies and a stolen watch. He laughed, but his eyes flickered, his confidence wavering. You'll regret this, Uncle Miles, he said, turning to leave. But as he walked out, I saw the board clearly. His threats were a desperate move, a cornered rook lashing out. Therefore, I knew my next play had to be decisive, final. I sat in Derek's office the next morning, the city waking up outside, the weight of Tyler's threat lingering, but my resolve unshaken. In chess, the center of the board is everything. Control it, and you control the game. I decided to control the legal narrative, to turn Lauren's and Tyler's weapons against them. Derek had pulled the hidden camera footage from Lauren's cloud account, and it was gold, hours of her staging arguments, editing reality to paint me as unstable. But more importantly, it showed her discussing the shell companies with Tyler, their voices clear, incriminating. "We file a countersuit," I said, my voice steady. "Fraud, emotional distress, invasion of privacy. Use the footage, use the IRS report, use everything." Derek nodded, his fingers flying across his keyboard. But then he paused, his face grim. "Miles, there's something else. The IRS audit just uncovered a new layer. Bright Horizon isn't just laundering money for Lauren and Tyler. It's tied to a bigger network, a criminal syndicate out of Buffalo. This is bigger than we thought." My stomach dropped, my mind racing. A syndicate? This wasn't just personal anymore. It was dangerous. If Lauren and Tyler were tangled up with organized crime, my revenge could expose me to risks I hadn't anticipated. Retaliation, threats, worse. But then I remember my father's watch, Tyler's smirk, Lauren's venom. I couldn't stop now. Therefore, I had to decide, destroy them and risk everything, or walk away and let them win. "I'm not backing down," I said, my voice firm. "File the suit. Leak the footage to the journalist. Make it public, make it loud." Derek hesitated, his eyes searching mine. "You sure, Miles? This could blow up in your face, your job, your reputation, everything." I nodded, my jaw tight. In chess, sometimes you sacrifice a piece to win the game. I've already sacrificed enough. Now it's their turn to lose. Therefore, we moved forward, the countersuit filed, the footage leaked, the story exploding across local news. Lauren's clients dropped her reputation in tatters. But then the IRS called, their tone sharp, official. "Mr. Thompson, we need to discuss your involvement in Bright Horizon." My heart sank, but my mind sharpened. I hung up the phone, the IRS agent's voice echoing in my mind, their questions sharp, probing. "Your name isn't on the paperwork, Mr. Thompson, but as a spouse, you could be liable for joint assets." I sat in my office, the walls closing in, my thoughts spiraling. I'd spent weeks dismantling Lauren's and Tyler's lives, but now, the fallout was threatening to engulf me. My job, my savings, my future, all hanging by a thread. I thought back to the early days of our marriage, when Lauren's laugh could light up a room, when we'd stay up late dreaming about a future together. I'd seen her ambition as passion, her charm as love. But now I saw the truth. She'd been playing me from the start, a grandmaster in her own game of deception. The betrayal cut deep, but the cost of my revenge cut deeper. Was it worth it, this path of destruction? Therefore, I drove to Kendra's house, needing answers, needing closure. She opened the door, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. "Miles," she whispered, "please stop this. Tyler's life is ruined. The IRS, the articles, he'll never recover." I stepped inside, my anger flaring but my heart heavy. "And what about me, Kendra? What about what they did to me?" She sank onto the couch, her voice breaking. I know, but he's my son, Miles. I can't lose him." I wanted to scream, to shake her, but then I saw the photo on her mantle. Me and Kendra as kids, smiling, our father's chessboard between us. Family, loyalty, the things I'd fought for, the things I was losing. But then my phone buzzed, a notification from my bank. Lauren had drained our joint accounts, every last dime, transferring it to an untraceable account. I stared at the screen, my anger reigniting, my resolve hardening. I was down my last piece on the board, my options dwindling. Therefore, I had to make my final move, but it would cost me everything. I looked at Kendra, my voice low, steady. "I'm sorry, sis, but this isn't just about Tyler. It's about justice." I walked out, my mind clear, my heart heavy. I drove home, the city lights blurring past, my mind locked on the endgame. In chess, there's a concept called zugzwang, when every move you make leads to defeat, but you have to move anyway. Lauren and Tyler were in zugzwang, their options exhausted, their lies exposed. But so was I, my job on the line, my finances gutted, my family fractured. I had one move left, and it had to be perfect. Therefore, I orchestrated a public expose, the final blow. I leaked everything. The hidden camera footage, the IRS report, the offshore accounts, the syndicate ties, to the journalists, to the media, to Lauren's clients. The story exploded, national news picking it up, headlines screaming, real estate fraud ring busted. Lauren and Tyler were arrested, charged with fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. The footage of their conversations, their laughter, their schemes, played on every channel, their faces plastered across screens. But then the fallout hit me. My company, wary of the scandal's publicity, regretfully terminated my contract, citing reputational risk. The IRS froze our joint assets, pending investigation, leaving me with nothing but a rented apartment and a dwindling savings account. I sat in that empty space, the silence deafening, my victory hollow. I'd won, but at what cost? I thought back to a chess lesson my father taught me. Sometimes, the game isn't about the pieces you take, but the board you leave behind. I dismantled their lives, but mine was in pieces too. Therefore, I walked away from the board, wondering if I'd ever play again. I packed my bag, sold what little I had left, and moved to a small town in Oregon, starting over as a chess coach for underprivileged kids. The game, at least, still made sense: strategy, patience, fairness. But then, a month later, a letter arrived from Kendra, her handwriting shaky, apologetic. "Miles, I'm sorry. I want to reconnect, to fix this. Please." I set it aside, my heart heavy, my trust broken. But then I found a news article online. Lauren and Tyler, out on bail, had named me in a countersuit, claiming I'd orchestrated the entire scandal. My blood ran cold, but my mind sharpened. I stood in my tiny Oregon apartment, the news article glowing on my laptop screen, my heart pounding, my thoughts racing. Lauren and Tyler, out on bail, weren't just fighting the charges, they were fighting me, claiming I'd fabricated evidence, manipulated the IRS, set them up to take the fall. The article quoted Lauren, her voice dripping with feigned innocence. "My husband's obsession with control destroyed our lives." Tyler, ever the victim, added, "He hated me from the start, wanted me gone." The lies were bold, audacious, but effective. Comments online were split, some calling me a hero, others a monster. I thought back to the kids I coached, their eager faces as I taught them pawn structures, their laughter as they toppled my king in practice games. I found purpose here, a quiet life, a chance to rebuild. But now, the game was back on, the board reset, the pieces moving again. Therefore, I had to decide: walk away, let them spin their lies, or fight, risk everything I'd rebuilt. I picked up Kendra's letter, rereading her words, her plea for forgiveness. I wanted to believe her, to believe family could heal, but the wounds were too fresh, the stakes too high. I set the letter down, my jaw tight, my resolve hardening. The game wasn't over. It had never been over. Therefore, I picked up my pieces and prepared for round two. I called Derek, my voice steady, my mind clear. "They're coming for me," I said. "I need you to dig up everything: bail hearings, witness statements, anything we missed. This time, we end it for good." He sighed, but I heard the smile in his voice. "You sure you want back in, Miles? You barely got out alive last time." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I'm sure. In chess, you don't leave the board until checkmate. And I'm not checkmated yet." Thank you for tuning in to Tori Story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world are you watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.